Lizard people, welcome. A very popular sea theory is that the British royal family and world leaders are actually a race of reptilian or lizard people. I suppose this has been most popularised by David Icke, whom I certainly rather enjoy listening to, and I have to say he does seem like a nice person. But I have to admit that I am somewhat sceptical about the whole thing. I just felt it was worth exploring in a little more detail. George Warren Shufelt. The origins of this myth appears to be with George Warren Shufelt, who I've been aware of for some little time, and I've got to say I'm rather fascinated by him, as I am by most sort of Victorian, Edwardian Americans who were somewhat involved in mysticism and magic, the New Age, if you like. One of the more colourful urban legends of Los Angeles is that of the lizard people, an advanced race of humans who created an underground city in Los Angeles some 5,000 years ago. According to the story, incalculable riches and gold tablets with the origins of human civilization carved into them are just waiting to be discovered underneath Los Angeles. The story is allegedly drawn from a Hopi Indian myth by a tribesman called Chief Goldenleaf, and it was told to geophysical and mining engineer called George Warren Shufelt in 1933. So sorry, it's a fair bit later than Victorian Edwardian, but nevertheless, he still fits in with many of these other people I've talked about. As it turns out, Shufelt had invented what he called an X-ray machine, which he believed could detect underground tunnels. Although in fact the machine was little more than a dowsing rod. Now you may know that my father could dowse, and he didn't attach any great importance to it. It's just something he could do. So I do believe in the power of dowsing. I'm not trying to cast major doubt on it. And in fact, when I first arrived in Indonesia, since the health crisis it's not so common, but when I first arrived in Indonesia, security guards outside major hotels and shopping malls carried with them these electronic devices, supposedly to find bombs, but again, they were little more than sophisticated dowsing rods, sold to them by unscrupulous Western companies, I might add. Schufelt's quest for the lizard people's golden treasure was picked up on and followed very closely by the Los Angeles Times, and then the Associated Press, which spread Schufelt's search for the lost catacombs and inhabitants across all of America. The entire underground city, appropriately shaped like a lizard, reached from Elysian Park, the lizard's head, to Central Library, the top of its tail. Shufelt swore up and down that he'd discovered the exact location of 1,900 square feet of tunnels, rooms with 9,000 feet of floors and floor space, and places where the gold was stored by using his radio X-ray machine. He created a map of the passages below the surface of Fort Moore Hill. After getting permission from the County Board of Supervisors, he began to dig up North Hill Street, overlooking Sunset Spring and North Broadway. That way was watched like an engineering soap opera by folks in the grip of the Depression. The deal made Shufelt and his small team of associates was a 50-50 split with the county. But the dig was plagued by challenges, dense boulders and mud after the shafts passed the water table. When winter turned into spring, the digging stopped as the money dried up and the newspaper stories vanished. Shufelt himself, however, did stay in Los Angeles and finally died in North Hollywood in November 1957. Now, there's no record of the existence of Chief Goldenleaf, nor of the Hopi legend of lizard people, although there are legends of them living underground. Indeed, the Hopi themselves never lived in California, although I'm not sure that this was a central part of Shufelt's claim, so it's not necessarily disproving his claim. Nevertheless, Shufelt himself had a track record of such claims. He'd previously claimed to have an ancient sheepskin map of buried conquistador gold. Newspaper reports insisted that the buried treasure was Spanish gold, planted in the colonial period, and the crew felt that they'd be ready to bring it out after 20 feet, after a 28-foot shaft was sunk. Of course, buried treasure is a recurring belief within magic. Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormons, was a practicing magician and treasure hunter. Indeed, a bizarre twist to the black magic that we've experienced was that my wife could use near Aurora Keedle's power to locate Indonesia's lost treasure. And the lost treasures of Indonesia is a recurring focus within Indonesia and with Indonesian magic. But maybe it has more to do with the lost money, or the money that was taken from Indonesia and put into Singapore bank accounts, and not so long ago. Fort Moore Hill itself, all this occurred during the Great Depression, because of course there was a ready supply of labour, and given the publicity, investors looking to make easy money. Fort Moore Hill itself has been extensively excavated, using the soil in the construction of Union Station, and a cut through for the Hollywood Freeway, but nothing was ever found. The reptilian race. David Icke, I suppose, really popularised the theory of the reptilian race, that there's a reptilian race living amongst us. He claims in his book The Biggest Secret that world leaders such as Queen Elizabeth and other members of the royal family were reptiles with crowns. He tells of meeting two victims of mind control, Cathy O'Brien and Arizona Wilder, who claimed to have been forced to conduct satanic rituals of human sacrifice for high-level dignitaries, including the British royal family. Wilder told of witnessing Queen Elizabeth eat human flesh and drink human blood after such a sacrifice. After the Queen ate human flesh, she would shapeshift into a reptilian with long reptile face, almost like a beak, and an off-white colour to her. Wilder made the same claims against Prince Charles, who would shapeshift into a reptilian and take special delight in sacrificing children. Christine Fitzgerald, a woman representing herself as a close friend and confidant of Princess Diana, told Icke that Diana had nicknamed the members of the House of Windsor the Lizards, and the princess had meant that literally, not figuratively. According to Fitzgerald, no member of the royal family had died for quite some time. They just metamorphosised, a process somewhat like cloning. And maybe the origin of the reptilian conspiracy theory originated in the fiction of Conan the Barbarian, created by Robert E. Howard in his story The Shadow Kingdom, published in Weird Tales in August 1929. The story drew on the theosophical ideas of the lost worlds of Atlantis and Lemuria, particularly Helena Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine, written in 1888, with its reference to dragon men who once had a mighty civilization on a Lemurian continent, And as I've mentioned before, David Icke himself is heavily influenced by Theosophist Alice Bailey. Maurice Doriel wrote a pamphlet entitled The Mysteries of the Gobi that describes a serpent-like race with bodies like a man but heads like a great snake, an ability to take human form, and this was in the 1940s. These creatures also appeared in Doriel's poem The Emerald Tablets, in which he refers to the Emerald Tablets of Hermes Trismegistus. And the Emerald Tablets formed the basis of David Icke's book Children of the Matrix. In The Nameless City, H.P. Lovecraft, the Old Ones were a race of seal-like reptilians who continue to exist as bodiless ghosts. And now the problem with discussing David Icke and his theories is that he's so widely derided by the mainstream. Undoubtedly he's written so much that's easy to pick holes in and indeed make fun of in what he says and what he writes. His theories also are linked to those concerning the Illuminati, and therefore often include prominent Jewish families, which leads to claims that he's anti-Semitic. And of course, many of these things that he's claiming do have strong parallels with myths created in Nazi Germany, although not for 1 minute am I trying to claim that David Icke is a Nazi, and I'm not sure he's actually anti-Semitic. I do believe him to be well-meaning, if a little over-influenced by somewhat dubious people and theories. And nevertheless, like much of what he says, if we see it as a metaphor, I think maybe there is something useful in it all. Some further thoughts. Of course, there's been many examples of reptilian gods or spirits across antiquity. I mean, if you're interested in it, look at Ancient Aliens, even though I'm very dismissive of Ancient Aliens. But, you know, they talk about it in great detail. The Ubiad figurines from Mesopotamia are humanoid, but with reptilian-like faces, elongated snouts, as it were. The Talmud mentions the Sephirim, a winged serpent which spits fire. The Old Testament itself mentions a snake and a hash as a part of the creation story. The Naga, a snake or dragon creature, are common across South and East Asia, including the legend of Nirokidol, who I talk about extensively in Indonesia and especially in Java. And then there are feathered lizard gods mentioned across the Americas, really. The truth is, there's little that really connects these myths. And indeed, human figures mixed with animals are common across antiquity, not simply reptiles. I mean, there does appear to be a magical connection to these, but again, it differs by myth. For what it's worth, I believe they are a metaphor for the Dark Triad, or trying to explain the Dark Triad, narcissists, psychopaths and Machiavellians. Indeed, if you listen to my vlogs, you'll know I have a theory of my own on these, that these are avatars, meet Golem, or human automata, lacking free will, although they had the free will to give themselves up in the first place. But that's just my theory. Now, the tribune brain is a model of the evolution of the vertebrate's forebrain and behaviour, first proposed by American physician and neuroscientist Paul D. MacLean. The tribune brain is said to consist of a reptilian complex, or lizard brain, the paleo-mammalian complex, the limbic system, and the non-mammalian complex, the neocortex, viewed as independently conscious and as structures sequentially added to the forebrain in the course of evolution. The reptilian brain complex, also known as the R-complex, reptilian brain or lizard brain, was the name that MacLean gave to the basal ganglia structures derived from the floor to the forebrain during development. MacLean proposed that the reptilian complex was responsible for species-typical instinctual behaviours involved in aggression, dominance, territoriality, and indeed in ritual displays. The paleo-mammalian complex consists of the septum, amygdala, hypothalamus, hippocampal complex, and cingulate cortex. MacLean's recognition of the limbic system as a major function in the brain was widely accepted amongst neuroscientists, and this part is generally regarded as his most important contribution to the field. MacLean himself maintained that the structures of the limbic system arose in the early mammalian evolution, hence paleo-mammalian, with paleo meaning old, and were responsible for the motivational and emotional emotion involved in feeding, reproductive behaviour, and indeed in parental behaviour. The neo-mammalian complex consists of the cerebral neocortex, a structure found uniquely in higher mammals and especially in humans. MacLean regarded its addition as the most recent step in the evolution of the mammalian brain, conferring the ability for language, abstraction, planning, and preconception. However, since the 1970s, evolutionary and developmental neuroscience has, I did write disproved, let's water that down and say question this theory. Nevertheless, you'll still find this very platform full of vlogs which talk about this concept. Why? Well, maybe because it's useful in as much as it explains some of the links between the brain and psychology. Indeed, when I speak about the ego reasserting itself through fear, I do see this as a useful metaphor. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this vlog, and if you have, can you help me out a little? Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and then you'll be notified of future vlogs, but also hit the like button and make a comment, because these seem to be what determine the YouTube algorithm, and I'm being really punished by it. So whatever help I can get from you is so appreciated. It really is. When I started this, I was going to do it this section, the real magic of Java. I was going to issue maybe every 2-3 months. Now it's happening maybe every 2 or 3 days. So yeah, if you hit the bell, you'll hear about it. And thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Really heartfelt thanks.